Well, it's 8:03. Tim, we should probably get started.
Yeah, we can go ahead and get started. It looks like we got 7 on
Okay.
the call now. Should we start out with a roll call to get things
Yeah,
going?
Amanda, do you mind taking roll call?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you, just a reminder, if you could state your name, I'll just kind of go through the list, but if you could state your full name and then where you are participating from, and it doesn't have to be very specific, but just the city or the county and the state that you're currently in and that you're participating remotely this morning. Luis, Mayor Bliss, KM.
I am here and I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, participating remotely.
Thank you. Jermel.
Yes, I am here as well, participating remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Greg.
Greg McNeely, participating remotely from glorious Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Great. Jen.
Good morning, Jen Schottke, participating remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Diana.
Diana Seeger, participating remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Jim Talon.
Jim Talon, participating remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Great. And your mic is a little quiet. If you could turn up just a bit. You're fine for now, but when we get talking, it might be hard to hear. And Rick.
I am Rick Wynn, participating remotely from Grand Rapids.
Great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Welcome, everybody. First, I'll call to order this Downtown Development Authority meeting on February 10th. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from January 13th. Are there any comments or corrections?
This is KM. I would move approval.
This is Diana. I second the motion.
All right. Any other comments or corrections? To remind everybody, I'll just ask if there are anybody voting no on a particular item. So is there anybody for this particular motion that would like to vote no? Hearing none, motion is approved. We move on to the January 31 financials. Do we have Tricia Chapman on?
I do.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Here's your statements through January of this year. Nothing out of the ordinary. We spent quite a bit on some COVID economic relief winter ready grants for our businesses downtown, and some improvements to the Arena Plaza, probably some of the final bills coming through for that. If anybody has any questions or comments, let me know. I will try to get you the answers right away or get back to you if I need to.
So we need a motion, if there are no comments or questions, we need a motion to accept statement D.
Correct, thank you.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
This is
This is
KM.
Diana. I second the motion.
Okay. Diana and KM, you want to fight over the second? Or
That's all right. I'll concede to Diana.
remotely? Yeah. All right. Any other comments or questions on the financials? Is there anyone? We have a motion and a second. Is there anyone that would like to vote no for this motion? Hearing none, the motion is accepted. Winter ready. You know, that's hard to say, winter ready, like really quick. Winter ready grant update. Mr. Miller?
Good morning. So in your memo, we spelled out some of the stuff that's been happening over the course of about the last month. As you might remember, you have allocated $375,000 to this grant. As of the February 5th date of the memo, there was a total of $300,000 that had been spent on funding support for the outdoor dining. Additionally, there was another 42,000 that we've committed but not yet paid because we're waiting for an install of some of that stuff. So we typically pay part of the money up front and then the rest of it after it's installed. So that 42,000 is pending, which at the time of writing left us with about $33,000 within the grant. And so to date, there's been 23 businesses that have been funded within that monetary amount, and 21 of them have functioning structures on the ground. So this map that Marion in our office put together begins to show some of the activity that's happening. So we're constantly going to be updating this and hopefully moving the stuff that's in the blue column over to the red column, meaning that it's installed. So you can begin to get an idea of where some of that stuff is happening. I think it's a really instructive map to see sort of the breadth of the activity that's happening. So in addition to all of that, there's within that map, there's like 74 structures so far and 66 heaters within that footprint. So when I wrote the memo, we expected another 3 to 4 businesses that would have structures up. I think we've gotten about 3 of them. Z's was put up yesterday, and Brick and Porter was finished on Tuesday. So there's quite a bit of activity still happening. Also, when I wrote the memo, we anticipated, based upon many conversations, probably between 15 and 20 additional businesses expressing interest. And when I say that, it's either they're in permit at the city right now, or they're a couple of them are still trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do, but it's very close to moving into permit phase. So we would expect and project out that would be approximately another $250,000, which would bring the grant to $625,000. As a side note, just yesterday we received an additional 9 requests. Those were all within that 15 to 20 that were anticipated. So we're getting really close to the end of this, and really expecting that we won't have any more than what we already know that are out there. There's just not everybody who is interested is sort of moving or has already done something. So we're not expecting a whole lot of new stuff coming down the pipeline. So really the main portion of this action is to request that additional $250,000, which would bring the grant total to $625,000. And then there's a couple of other things that I would also recommend. One of them is in the memo. As you know, we've been working directly with Prestige Products to alleviate the business having to come up with money up front to pay for these things and then get reimbursed. That had been limited to $150,000. We would like to just bring that up to a not to exceed amount of $400,000, which is really the $250,000 that we're asking for, being added to the $150,000 that's already in place to cap that. And then also we've had a few conversations with a company called Machine Star, who is currently working with Luna to do a few things. And so we would like to incorporate a direct payment to them in the event that they end up doing a few of these for restaurants moving forward. So that's what's in the memo. And then in addition to that, after the memo writing, we did have a request come in from Apartment Lounge. That request was $20,000. So since that's above the $15,000 that that the staff can approve, we're asking that the DDA make an approval of that $20,000. And just as a note, they were included in that 15 to 20 businesses that we were anticipating. We just hadn't gotten a firm number from them or a firm plan from them at the date of the writing of the memo. So those are really the 3 things that I'm asking for, and then or recommending. And then just as a point of accounting, we've sort of begun to look at some of our budget from last year, what hasn't been spent, what we don't anticipate to be spent. And I think that one of the big items in the goal 3 number was a $400,000 allocation that we had budgeted for transit shelters in the DDA boundary. To date this year, we haven't had any being installed. That's a result of a combination of many things. The rapid COA that was still being done, so they were reticent to actually figure out exactly where some transit stops were because of that. Obviously, COVID had some implications or ramifications to that. And so our anticipation is that we won't be using that 400,000 in this fiscal year. Although we do anticipate that there might be a smaller portion allocated to transit shelters in fiscal year 2022. So that gives us a little bit of room in terms of our overall budget where we could allocate some of that money if needed to cover some of these expenses moving forward. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So Mark, just for all of us on the board, all of these requests are still within the overall $1 million budget that we had set up, correct?
Yes.
So we're not asking for more money above and beyond the $1 million?
That is true.
Okay. Before we move on this, we need to, Amanda, we need to acknowledge Mayor Bliss and Luis. I don't know if we need to officially have them state where they're coming from.
I think that would be helpful, especially if they choose to motion
Okay.
or second something. Luis and Mayor Bliss, if you could just state your name and that announce that you're participating remotely and where you are participating from.
Okay, I'll go first. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm running a few minutes late. Rosalind Bliss here, and I'm in the city of Grand Rapids.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
And this is Luis, and I am also in the city of Grand Rapids.
Good morning.
Okay, great. Any questions for Mark or Tim on the request?
Chairman, I had a couple of questions. One was just to encourage Mark to continue to try to figure out, calculate if there was a way to calculate the number of jobs or revenue that these structures are generating. I know post February 2nd, that might get a little more complicated. And then a question sort of open-ended has there been any concepts or discussion about reusing these in the 21-22 flu season? If consumers were interested, would the city re-permit or allow for these to be redeployed?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that we have internally discussed and certainly discussed with a few of the business owners, because there's a great deal of interest out there in what's next, not only in the spring, but in the fall and the colder part of the year in 2021. So I think that the way that we're looking at this is obviously GR Forward talks about a four-season city, and a lot of this stuff is potentially stuff that we can continue to use, or the businesses can continue to use to promote that four-season city. It's been a popular thing for many folks to sit in these things and sort of be semi-outside during the winter. And just as a few examples of what we're thinking, there's some low-hanging fruit, like things that are on private property. So for instance, the Bob is going to be putting some up on their property either this week or next week. The downtown market will have some on their property in the near future. And I think that both of those cases, those entities are pretty confident that they're going to continue to use those things to provide a different kind of atmosphere for seating even after the pandemic is over. And So the other thing about the public property is I think that that's still to be determined. There's certainly some opportunities on the wider sidewalks, like on Monroe Center, where we could begin to deploy these, or businesses could deploy them in the post-COVID world to create that outdoor seating opportunity in the wintertime. So I think it's something that there's interest on all sides, and moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how these things play out. But we fully anticipate using them to implement some of our own GR Forward goals.
Yeah, I could see us keeping Monroe Center as a one-lane street and, you know, year-round seating in the street. I mean, I think we need to embrace the outdoors year-round. I mean, that's my feeling. And, you know, as you know, Greg, and we've discovered too, people are discovering that they like to eat outside in the winter, given the right amount of heat. But it's kind of fun and it's novel, and so, and given the social zone districts that we have now, that it just seems to make sense to me. Plus, we need a payback on these structures. And I think, to answer your first question, I mean, I think every one of these 30 or so restaurants that stay alive, I think we can take some credit for helping them through this whole crisis. So, I mean, we may not be able to get specific dollars associated with these, but we could get statements from owners, I'm sure.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. It does look like member Eddie has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, well, good morning, everybody, first of all. But yeah, I just wanted to state that I like the fact that folk are out and about in the downtown areas, you know, eating and, you know, entertaining and hanging out and laughing during COVID. And as I think about these with spring and summer coming, and maybe in fall as well, I'm wondering, you know, if the anticipation is that they'll stay up. And then my mind goes to, for some of these, that whole greenhouse effect with the heat and how comfortable or not they could be. But I know some of them have sides that you can take off. And then the last point I'd like to make is, and I don't know how it actually works, but if we're going to keep these up, you know, long term, it'd be really cool, in my opinion, to see like some sort of art or painting or something to go on some of these. Now, I don't know how it works with some of the plastic sides and things of that nature, but I would love to see some, I guess, beautification, you know, of them going forward, so that they can, you know, match all the great artwork and artistry that we do have in our city.
Very good point. Just to let everyone know, DGRI is having 3 meetings next week with various segments of the downtown businesses to discuss the future of the social zones for the spring and summer. So we should be able to get some ideas and idea generation going during those meetings next week, just as a beginning of figuring out what's next during the summertime. And even yesterday, I met with one of the business owners who was meeting with a landscaper who they were figuring out what they were going to be planting this spring for their summer season. So some of them are already thinking ahead to what is this going to look like in the summer, and making it like a very inviting place. I think that the thing we learned last year is the folks that did a lot of effort with landscaping and beautification really had a higher level of success than people that did not. So I think there's a lot of interest out there from these businesses to dress it up. And I know that some of you have probably walked by the Ruth's Chris structures, and I think that they bumped it up a notch even in the winter. They've got artwork hanging in there. They've got some really fancy lights, fancy linens. I think they even have carpet in them, or some sort of floor covering. So I think when people see that, they say, oh, well, I could do this or I could do that. So there's a lot of like experimentation that's going on to make these things more inviting as they evolve.
And just on that point, Mark, we also, so you'll remember when we purchased the concrete barriers back in the spring, summer, that was in an attempt to help to market these things a little bit differently and brand them. And then just a reminder on the grants that we're issuing for the winter ready component, we do technically own those structures, so we do have the ability to do similar type activities with these structures going forward.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we need a motion for, if there's three motions here or one motion, but willing to support moving it.
Mark, how are you packaging this in terms of a motion?
I guess I would ask Amanda how best it would be for her to work through this visit, 3 or 1.
We can just follow the recommendations on the memo. So the first one is to authorize DDA funding in an amount not to exceed $250,000 for the winter ready grant, bringing that total to not to exceed $625,000. Greg, are you in support of that?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
And
I'll point out, it looks like a member Avila has a hand raised.
Oh, Luis, do you have a question? Or
Yeah, no, I support this this motion. My question has more to do with the prestige products. You know, we approve purchasing directly from them, and I'm just wondering how that relationship is going. I've talked to a few business owners. It seems like a couple have mixed feelings about how that has gone, but I'm just wondering whether we've gotten any feedback as to how they're doing in terms of delivering what we are purchasing.
Good question. I think that we had a couple weeks there that were a little difficult for a variety of reasons. The biggest one being that Prestige had some difficulty getting the material. So a lot of this material is a clear vinyl, as you can see on the sides of these structures, and it has to be fire rated as per the building code and our local building officials. There's only a few manufacturers who produce that kind of thing in the United States, and because of COVID shutdowns, they didn't have a lot of it. In fact, I think Prestige has bought the last available out there in the last couple of weeks. So there was just some material issues that they couldn't get to. They are now producing these things at a pretty good clip, but I can see where there was a point where there was a little bit of frustration because things were not happening as quickly as some people wanted. And that was probably the biggest reason from the standpoint of production. That's also why we've introduced the Machine Star possibility, because they are very similar. They're located locally, and they can produce a very similar thing, although I think that we have yet to determine how much of this material they actually have secured. So that's a little bit of an issue. I'm confident that from where we sit today, the stuff that we know that's out there can be produced. So we've got a little bit better handle on the scheduling of this stuff moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Member Eddie, do you have your hand up again, or?
Yes. One last just comment is with some of these structures, again, thinking about year round, 4-season city, with some of these structures, I'm wondering if there'll need to be a conversation, say come spring or summer, with the anticipation of more pedestrian walking traffic in terms of easement on the sidewalks. So for instance, when I was walking by Reserve earlier this week, I felt like they had a smaller walkway path between their structure and say the curb, as opposed to some of the other structures that I've seen. And so I don't know if that's something that will get addressed for the spring, summer. Again, I'm anticipating, and maybe this is premature, I'm anticipating, quite a few people out and about, especially as the vaccines get released and things of that nature. So it's just a comment, not necessarily a question.
Okay. We do have a motion. Do I have a second?
Chair, this is Mayor Bliss. I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments or questions? It's good stuff. I would ask anybody on the board that would like to vote no for this motion. Hearing none, motion carries.
Amanda, do we need to do the other one as well?
Yes, so the second motion, if we could get.
Thank you.
Yeah, is for the DDA to authorize direct payment to Prestige Products, which you've already approved for 150,000. But we'd like to increase that amount to 400,000, as well as those same funds also allowing direct payment to Machine Star. Are there any questions on, I don't know if I worded that correctly, if that makes sense to everyone.
So it's not increasing the overall amount of what we're asking. It's just taking the 250,000 that we're allocating in addition to today, and allowing it to be spent potentially with one of those two businesses.
So it's the same 250,000.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. We're not increasing the overall amount.
Yep.
Okay.
It just allows direct payment to those manufacturers as opposed to waiting for the businesses to pay for them and reimbursing the restaurants.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Louise. Any other comments or questions?
And then there was one more recommendation that didn't show up in the memo that I had mentioned a ways back, and that was for the apartment lounge and their structure for an allocation of 20,000, which is we require the DDA to approve that because it's above the $15,000 threshold that staff can approve.
So, Mayor, would you include that in your motion?
I will, or I'm curious if that needs to be a separate motion.
Tim or Amanda?
Yes, if you could support that as a third motion, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll separate these all out. There's some procedural elements here.
Okay. Yes, I will support that. The 20,000 allocation for the apartment lounge.
So we have two motions here. We need 2 seconds.
I second that.
Okay.
Third motion.
All right. Any comments or questions left over? Hearing none. Anybody on the board that would like to vote no for either of these motions? Hearing none, both motions carry. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions and comments.
Okay, next is the Latino Community Coalition Outreach Initiative. Is Kimberly on?
I sure am. Wouldn't miss it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a little bit of a write-up to make sure I don't miss anything that I want to include today in recapping the memo that was sent out in the agenda packet. So just as a quick recap, in 2016, DJ Rice started collaborating with the Latino Community Coalition to further advance Latino urbanism efforts and conversations here locally. With our partnership, we were able to bring in various professional urbanists to speak here in GR and continue the work of inclusivity and connection for downtown development, infrastructure, placemaking, and outreach. The series of speaking engagements has led the LCC to focus on development of unique spaces within the downtown for the Latin community to feel welcomed and engaged. With the growing global trend of developing underutilized spaces within the public and private alleyways, the LCC decided that this was an opportunity and priority they would like to implement and activate. So after hosting a focus group during one of the speaker series sessions focused on alley activation specifically, the community decided the most important aspect is naming the alley itself. So with the Women's Way initiative, the LCC decided that this would be a perfect opportunity to undertake a broad community engagement effort that will help to uncover the history of families and women that have helped establish and pave the way for our local Latino community and community itself. So this multi-phase project and proposal in front of you today with phase 1 focusing around community outreach, documentation, and education. After phase 1 is completed, the LCC would be able to start phase 2, which would lead to the development of a new space for people and placemaking. And phase 3 would lead to activation and programming specifically within that space. I would also like to add that this phase has an added benefit of documenting historical information on our community members that we do not have, and that will be able to uncover and archive this information with our partners that our local resources currently do not have data and documentation of. So as the GR Forward Master Plan Goal 5 is specifically focused on activation by reinvesting in public spaces, culture, and inclusive programming, before you today is a recommendation to approve the expenditure not to exceed $75,000 to support the Latino Community Coalition and Cantor Media's Community Outreach Initiative. So if you have any questions about the proposal, I believe Eleanor from the LCC is here to answer any questions you may have, and I'm happy to answer any as well.
Any questions from any board member?
This is Diana. I don't have any questions. I just am strongly in support of this important effort.
Is that a motion?
I move approval.
I second.
Diana Seeger moves approval.
Very good. Luis, is that you for the second?
Yeah, I would second, and I support Diana's views. I think this is a great project. I really like the community engagement piece. I was specifically really drawn to the component about asking the Latinx community about downtown initiatives, get their feedback to their experience. This isn't unique to us, right? Every organization in town is trying to figure out how to draw the Latinx community downtown. So I'm really excited about this project. I'm excited about the potential outcomes. And I love the intentionality of funneling some funds this direction. So fully supportive.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no for this motion?
Mr. Chairman, McNeely votes no.
All right, hearing only one, this motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is homeless outreach team presentation. Ms. Britton, are you with us?
I am. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
There we go. That's what I was waiting for. All right. So good morning, everybody. I am Tammy Britton. I'm the interim homelessness coordinator with the City of Grand Rapids. And today we're going to provide a housing and homelessness update. Next slide, please. I'm going to cover some of the things that the city has been doing for our homelessness response. Next slide. First, I'll talk about the homeless outreach team, which is more commonly known as HOT, or the HOT team. This launched in April 2020 in response to the pandemic to reduce the spread of COVID-19 among persons experiencing homelessness. Currently, there are 2 teams of 2 staff, 1 fire and 1 police on each team. They provide a daily boots on the ground outreach for unsheltered homelessness. They respond specifically to issues of street homelessness and assist in problem solving with businesses, residents, and service providers. We've refined their mission and goals beyond the pandemic. So their mission is to preserve health and safety and improve outcomes for homeless persons and our community. The goals, they have 3. Number 1 is provide timely response to concerns and complaints, improve public health and safety outcomes, and partner with community stakeholders in service delivery. The homeless outreach team has also undergone a few expansion efforts. The first was partnering with Network 180 to add an addiction specialist or a recovery coach and a social worker to each team. So that's a total of 2 recovery coaches and 2 social workers joining HOT. We added Saturdays and expanded hours, so coverage that Hot Now provides is Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And there's going to be an additional team beginning in March of 2021. This allows 2 teams daily, Monday through Friday. Next slide, please. The City of Grand Rapids also has the Homelessness Work Group. This launched in October 2020 and is a function of the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center. It's executive level, an interdisciplinary team authorized and empowered to act in emergency management mode. The departments represented in the Homelessness Work Group are police, fire, public services, parks and rec, code compliance, and the community development departments. The mission is to protect health and safety and improve outcomes for homeless persons in our community by addressing immediate, emerging, and systemic conditions made worse by COVID-19. Part of the work that the Homelessness Work Group has done has been to work to refine the HOT team mission and goals, and we also supported the expansion of the team. The Homelessness Work Group also facilitated ARIS investments. That acronym stands for Economic Resiliency and Recovery Investment Strategy. And a little bit further into the presentation, when we go over investments the city has made for housing and homelessness, Connie Bohach will talk more about ARIS and other investments. But here, the ARIS investments that were facilitated through the Homelessness Work Group include supporting shelter operations to address COVID protocols and increase bed capacity for women's sheltering. Also increased case management and street outreach services, and supported rapid rehousing efforts for unsheltered persons on Monroe Center. The Monroe Center project to date has 51 unsheltered persons engaged with a housing resource specialist, 38 connected to a permanent housing resource, 25 moved into temporary shelter, or others are staying with family and friends, and 7 have been permanently housed. Next slide, please. Some more information about the Homelessness Work Group. There was recently a shelter expansion. We partnered with Mel Trotter Ministries and Guiding Light to increase emergency shelter capacity during the winter months. This is at the Purple East Building, or 250 Ionia. There were 88 guests on Monday night, with an average of 65 guests staying at the new location. 52 people on average are using the daily warming center. And 11 days in January, Mel Trotter was actually at capacity. So if it hadn't been for the expansion, individuals would have been turned away for overnight shelter. There was also the efforts at Hartside Park. A cleanup occurred December 21st through the 23rd. There were coordinated outreach efforts conducted for several weeks in advance, which very much included HOT. There's been an online petition to turn Hartside Park into an urban campground, and the city responded to the petition to turn Hartside Park into an urban campground with Hartside Park questions and answers, which can be found online. From this, we also participated in City Commission listening sessions. So 2 sessions were facilitated by Dwelling Place and the Hartside Downtown Neighborhood Association for Hartside area residents. This was an opportunity for residents to express concerns and solutions to the city commissioners, or to the city commission. Concerns that were brought up were safety for all residents, the use of the Hartside Park and downtown green space, access to affordable housing and homelessness resources, and the increase seen in homelessness. Solutions the residents would like to support were affordable housing, access to mental health and social services, shared use of park amenities, and park improvements and park programming. And next slide, please. All right, some additional city actions regarding homelessness. The city implemented a cleanliness initiative, providing additional resources to clean sidewalks, streets, alleys, bridges, parks, shelters, and bus stops. Partners on this effort include the RAPID, Department of Transportation, Kent County Road Commission, DGRI, Steepletown Ministries, Next Step of West Michigan, and some city departments and the HOT team. We also have an enhanced partnership with DGRI and other stakeholders, downtown ambassadors, working earlier shifts, engaging homeless persons before the day starts, improving environmental design to mitigate issues discouraging business patrons and/or safety concerns. The city has also appointed an interim homelessness coordinator. Some of the responsibilities for the interim homelessness coordinator include supporting HOT and the HOT team efforts, coordinating city service responses, and supporting external partnerships. Okay, next slide. At this time, I'll turn it over to Connie Bohatch to talk more about the city investments in housing and homelessness.
Good morning. Thank you, Tammy. I'm Connie Bohatch. I'm the Managing Director of Community Services for the City of Grand Rapids. And as Tammy identified some of our most recent specific actions that we've taken related to homelessness, we also wanted to share with you some information about investments that the city makes. In particular, this is on an annual basis related to housing and homelessness. Our primary sources for funding come through the federal government. That's the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnerships, and the Emergency Solutions Grants programs. And we receive those funds on an annual basis, and it can fluctuate slightly because the funds are allocated, appropriated by Congress. So it's really dependent upon what the federal government and what Congress appropriates on that when they create their budget. So for example, this current fiscal year, which is July 1 through June 30th of 2021, we'll receive we have $4.6 million that we will be investing in this area. That includes activities such as construction of affordable housing units, making major and minor home repairs, for persons that are low mod income to make their, and also allows them to make their homes accessible for persons with disabilities, addressing issues of lead to make the home safe for children, rent and utility assistance to prevent eviction and to support rapid rehousing for homeless individuals and families, as well as provision of legal and fair housing services and education. So that's what we do on an annual basis. But as Tammy indicated, we've had to ramp things up related to COVID because there has been some more extenuating circumstances for, in particular, our most vulnerable populations and those who are low mod income. And the city had created its economic resiliency and recovery investment strategy as a framework to make investments that with additional resources that are coming into the city. And that's primarily supported through, again, these federal funds that are supplemental program funds for the CDBG program and the ESG programs. We've also included in the area of housing and homelessness some city resources aside from that in the amount of $250,000. But again, the bulk of that $3.3 million comes from those federal funds. In the ERA strategy, there's four areas within that framework, and three of those within what was referred to as resident resiliency actually address housing and homelessness. So housing security is probably where we have this most significant investment. You can see $2.8 million. That is for things such as emergency shelter, bridge sheltering, street outreach, and homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing. In particular, that when Tammy mentioned the project on Monroe Center, over $2 million of that went to support that effort for rapid rehousing. So we think there's some good results coming out of that. But again, that was a significant investment that's been made. In addition to that, housing supports to help folks maintain stable housing that includes some foreclosure intervention counseling, legal affairs for tenants, free legal services for tenants, as well as eviction prevention, case management services. And then the city's support for helping undocumented residents to stay in their homes through the La Lucha Fund to provide rent and mortgage assistance. Not included on that slide, I should mention also that that's through the ERIS strategy, but aside from that, through the city's general operating fund support, as Tammy mentioned, the HOT team initiative and the expansion of the winter shelter at Purple East. Within that those investments from the city's general operating fund, it's over $1 million just to support those activities that we think we've also had some very significant impact in the community. And we also wanted to share with you some of the other resources that are coming in to benefit the city as well as the broader Kent County geography through County CARES Act funds as well as state funds. So the County CARES Act funding, it has an investment of $8.2 million that has supported housing and homelessness, creation of isolation units in particular for COVID positive homeless persons, as well as some affordable housing contributions for organizations like ICCF and Link Up. Rent assistance, hotel and motel to provide emergency shelter for families experiencing homelessness. And they also supported the Purple East shelter overflow expansion. The Michigan State Housing Development Authority has provided $2.8 million through an eviction diversion program that's already been expended and completed at this point. But the good news is that we have new dollars coming into the community through the U.S. Treasury, again, through the Michigan State Housing Development Authority that will provide emergency rental assistance. We're anticipating that Kent County as a geography, which includes Grand Rapids, will receive $38.5 million through this program, and $35 million of that is direct financial assistance to pay for rent arrearages. Next slide, please. So we'll take any questions that you have, but if anyone has any need for information about the street homelessness, that they can reach out directly to our HOT team at these contact methods. And if there's anyone who's experiencing housing instability that you're aware of, or a family, an individual, 211 is our first place to call. And then any information related to the homelessness work group or other city initiatives, Ms. Britton would be the contact. And we appreciate you providing us the opportunity to share this information with you today.
Well, it's a great report. Are there any questions for Tammy or Connie?
I see a few hands up. I think member Talon had his hand up. Maybe before that, just real quick, I also wanted to just thank Tammy and Connie for taking the time this morning and for all their work on these initiatives. There's obviously a lot happening, some of which is downtown, but there's a lot of work goes into these initiatives citywide. So thank you both for the time this morning. And with that, I'll kick it over to member Talon.
Thank you, Tim and Chair, and thank you for the report. Great information. And Connie, I'm really excited to hear about the $38.5 million emergency rental assistance. Did both the city and the county apply for that? So that's a total for the entire county?
So this particular program through the U.S. Treasury, the city and the county had an option to get a direct allocation from the U.S. Treasury or to go under a state allocation. And both jurisdictions made the decision to go to allow to go under the MSHDA allocation process, because when you did the calculation of what we would be eligible as individual entities, it doubles the amount that, based on MSHDA's methodology, would come into Kent County as a geography. So the city nor the county will be getting those grant dollars directly. It'll go through more through our continuum of care process.
Wonderful. Those are such important dollars, and I'm so glad to hear that we were able to double that amount. Thanks.
Yep.
Mayor, do you have a question? I see your hand up too.
I do, Chair. Thank you. So I just want to thank Tammy and Connie, not just for presenting today, but really for all of their work. This is, as you all know, this is a complex issue, and it's been exacerbated because of the pandemic. I also want to just say thanks to DGRI and Anne Marie, who helped organize a Heartside listening session last week that I was able to participate in. And you know, similarly, is what we talked about there is that, you know, there's not a simple answer to a complex problem. It really takes all of us. And so I just want to really thank everyone, all of our partners who have helped. Obviously, there's more work to do, and we're committed to that. But I just want to say thanks. And then my question, Connie, is related to the eviction prevention dollars that Commissioner Talon just asked about. Process-wise, when will those dollars start to get out the door to help families? I'm really concerned about the eviction moratorium coming to an end, and I don't have a good sense of how many families in our city who, I don't know if you have the data about how many families are behind on their rent and can utilize or really need rental assistance to prevent evictions. Do you?
I don't have that data in my head right now. I can get that for you, and it would be an estimate, of course. But again, we have to wait for the state legislature to approve MSHDA's plan of how their distribution and plan. It's been presented to the governor. The governor's supportive of the methodology, and now it's just for all of the additional funding that's come through the federal government to the state. There's a package that they need to vote on in order to be able to appropriate the funds within the state. So we're waiting for that. When we talked to MSHDA staff most recently, they were thinking that by the beginning of March that they would be in a position for these funds to actually hit the streets. So that's what we're sort of sticking with and hoping that that's the case. And we're keeping an eye on what action is, what the legislative climate is looking like to do that. But again, confident that once that gets approved, that we will fare better than if we would have taken our direct allocations.
Thanks, Connie.
Member McNeely, do you have a question?
I do, and preface it by saying thank you to the city leadership and all the staff involved on this issue. I think because of the compassionate leadership of the city, Grand Rapids has avoided a couple of tragedies we've seen in nearby towns where there were some wintertime fatalities in this population. And I think that's the type of thing that Grand Rapids is working so hard to avoid. My question is, do we have a census or sort of a count of what the current population is, and how does that compare historically or trend-wise with previous years?
What you're referring to is called a point-in-time count, and we're required on an annual basis for that to occur in January. And Mr. Talon might even be able to explain that in more detail from his previous work with the Coalition on Homelessness. But between the last 2 point-in-time counts, if you were to look at that information, it has increased in terms of the number of homeless or unsheltered persons and chronically homeless. The count was just done. It's done every year in January. That has just recently occurred, and we don't have the data just yet. And the formal data takes several months to get, but what we try to do is get the sort of informal count, so we have the ability to understand it and be able to address some of the needs based on that information. I can tell you that right now, with these very cold temperatures, as Tammy mentioned, we're really happy to have supported and helped get that overflow shelter in operation that Mel Trotter is running. If not for that shelter, as Tammy mentioned, there was 11 days in January that the men's portion of Mel Trotter's traditional shelter was at capacity and would have had to turn away a significant number. So having that overflow shelter has been very helpful. The ability to put, because it's a congregate setting in shelters, with all the social distancing, it has really decreased the amount of capacity that our shelters have been able to handle. So that has been an important component. What we found, especially with this cold snap, we have what's called the street outreach or street reach groups that are going out. Mel Trotter goes out every single night with a van. They look to places where they know that folks might be sleeping outdoors and try to get them to come in for the night at a minimum. And have been quite successful in doing that. And they started that, last Tuesday or Wednesday, making sure that they're there every single night. Had the ability to put some folks into some hotels and motels, as well as getting some to come into the expanded shelters. So the number that we're seeing right now that they're reporting to us that are not coming in is relatively low. We have seen the numbers as low as 10 to 15.
Interesting. We have the city manager that would like, Mark, would you like to make a comment or a question?
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you, Rick. I too want to express my appreciation to Ms. Bohach and Britton for all their work that they've been doing, but also to Tim and DGRI and the ambassadors. It has really been a collaborative effort, not just in Hearthside, but also the work that we've done on Monroe Center and throughout the park systems in the downtown area and the various trails. And so I want to express my appreciation for the collaborative effort. And also, I want to just reemphasize, it's in your packet. And no, we didn't go over it in a lot of detail, but the effort to address the issues in Hearthside was not a cleanup for the sake of beautification or cleanup. There were some serious health and safety issues that's enumerated in the report. And we appreciate the partnership of the county health department for identifying those hazards that is really, really unsafe. There were fire hazards. There were places in which people were occupying that were just really unsanitary and unsafe. And I think, as Member McNeely indicated earlier, that we avoided some pretty tragic issues that resulted in loss of life in one community and several fires and explosions in others. And so I just want the public to understand that what we did was in the best interest of public health and safety in the efforts to follow the CDC guidelines, and it was all voluntary compliance. We are fortunate we did not criminalize homelessness. Probably there were no arrests that were made simply for people occupying the park because they were unhoused. And so I know a lot of narrative has been created around that, and I wanted to clarify that. And moreover, I think the efforts that we've seen from the residents and businesses that are in the immediate area, that are part of the neighborhood, is that the feedback that I've gotten from engagement sessions that their preferences were not to turn the park into a urban campground. So I just wanted to lift that, and again, thank the DDA and DGRI for your partnership.
Mr. Manager, we might just want to add that Tammy mentioned the Hearthside question and answer document that was put out in response to that petition. And in that, the city has clearly indicated that it does not have an intention to convert that park to an urban campground. And I think that that's important for folks to know and understand.
Thank you, Connie and City Manager. Yeah, just wanted to reiterate that memo was in the packet that was sent out to the board, so hopefully people had a chance to look at that. But I also wanted to mention we do have some of the historical point in time data counts, and we're happy to share that with all the members, and then we'll obviously continue to coordinate with the city and work with them. And as new information becomes available, we'll be happy to send that out to the board.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate the mayor's comments I mean, it certainly is a complicated issue. I think the report and all the work that's going on is admirable from city manager, mayor on downs or throughout. So we should express our thanks to all of you. Any other questions at all, or? All right, thanks so much, Connie and Tammy. Appreciate the report.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Next is downtown wayfinding presentation from Mr. Ellich.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Hopefully
morning.
my internet doesn't explode trying to run the prezo and talk to you with my face being visible. So hopefully most of you are aware that we are in the process of redesigning and kind of rehabilitating in some respects our downtown wayfinding system. So last year, which seems like a lifetime ago, we engaged Progressive A&E and RLR Associates to begin that process. We've been meeting pretty regularly with downtown stakeholders, residents, business owners, other community members to get a lot of good feedback and input on what works about the current wayfinding system, what doesn't, and what does a new wayfinding system need to look like. So I have invited Brianna here from RLR Associates, who's going to kind of walk us through where we sort of have landed with our design for the new wayfinding system, and understanding that there will probably be a little tweaks beyond what we see here today, but ultimately what we're going to look at is pretty close to the final product. So I'm going to disappear now, and I'm going to hand it over here to Bree.
Thanks, Melvin, and thank you guys for having us. So I am Brianna Metzger with RLR Associates, based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I am joined by Nikki Shear, who's our project manager. And just a little background: we are experiential graphic design designers, and our studio focuses on connecting people to place. So understanding how an audience needs to move through a place and how they should be impacted, and what key messages should be delivered to enhance their experience. So glad to be working on this project with Progressive A&E and with DGRI on this, and looking forward to catching you guys up on our status of the project to date, but then a little background as to how we got here as well. So. And we can talk through, so what you'll see here today is a little background as like I mentioned, as to how we've got here today is working with the steering committee for this project, which is made up of our business stakeholders here in the downtown, and our key leaders in the city, but then also neighborhood association leaders as well, with developing design goals for the wayfinding system. So that would help us to, moving forward, how our sign system needs to function, and what key messages need to be delivered through the sign system, and how should that system function for our downtown leaders and our city leaders as well, integrating this into the overall downtown experience. And moving forward from there, after developing our design goals, we developed a wayfinding strategy and findings report that has considered all of the existing conditions within the downtown. Pretty comprehensive study of key touch points in the visitor experience, from parking to transit to skywalk, to those key arrival points. We've considered all these conditions, but developing those design goals from there to coincide with how we understand visitors will need to move through the downtown, and then also picking up on one key aspect, which is the actual design of the sign system. And what you'll see here today is the selected sign family design, which is a conceptual, refined design of that system that we will look through some key sign types that will help represent that look and feel, but we'll be pursuing further to the full sign family, which you'll see here as a list of sign types that we feel are needed to address all of the needs of our audiences throughout their visit through the downtown, and then a key schedule for next steps. So as we take a look at our design goals here, just to reiterate how our sign system needs to function within the downtown. One of the key things that we'll see here today is how we unify the downtown brand. So we are working with the steering committee to develop that distinctive, cohesive sign system, but also thinking of ways to acknowledge our surrounding downtown neighborhoods and districts in a consistent way that they are accentuating their identity as well, but then having that cohesive framework to express those identities. We're also looking to, within the sign system, to welcome our visitors and have a very pronounced sense of arrival and starting that excitement for visiting and exploring downtown. We also need to guide our motorists to visitor parking opportunities, so then we're encouraging that walkability throughout the downtown by being able to, visitors being able to easily identify those parking locations within downtown. But then how do I move through, whether it's I am walking or whether I'm using transit to get to my destination. We also want to encourage through messaging, encourage a locally focused downtown and surrounding downtown visit experience. So we are emphasizing those restaurants, those businesses and attractions that are in the downtown through our sign devices. So there's an encouragement to stay downtown. And we also want to communicate as a multi-layered interconnected system. So I've mentioned that we have all these touch points for a visitor, right? That you're moving from your car to parking, but then also to potentially transit, using e-scooters or the bike share programs. We want to be able to have sign devices that are helping visitors at each of these points, no matter what mode of transit that I'm using to get to my destination, that I have the information that I need to orient myself and to get to where I need to go. But then also aiding these visitors in finding their destination by providing multi-layered information, right? So you're in multi ways of delivering the information. So addressing our visually impaired audiences and finding technology that our devices can carry to communicate that same information for those that are not visually impaired, considering multilingual ways of delivering that information. So to address audiences that need, that translation. But again, helping our visitors orient themselves to where they are, directing them to where they need to go, but providing other helpful information that can get them to their preferred route. But even with this sign system that it provides kind of this functional piece, we also want to provide more of an emotional, but also kind of a historic experience, right? With telling the history of downtown Grand Rapids in an exciting way. There may be some interpretive opportunities that this system could include as well, in kind of understanding this and creating this kind of greater appreciation for being in this destination and helping to create that memorable experience. So there's this historical component that we could integrate with the sign system as well. But then also, and kind of the final goal that we've established here is to use commonly understood terminology for destinations and for districts. So then the downtown local communication is the same as a first-time visitor, that these sign devices will sort of carry what is most understood for all audiences, and there's clarity and there's no uncertainty as to naming and terminology for destinations and areas within the downtown. So these were kind of the goals understood by the steering committee as these prioritized things that the sign system should accomplish, and that is what we have moved to in considering for messaging and sign locations and just all of the things that the wayfinding strategy will include. So. And then we can move to the next slide. So we have gone through with the steering committee in understanding what are those key attributes or characteristics that help to define the downtown experience. What is the mood and the tone that we want to reach with the look and feel of the sign system, and that helps to kind of overall brand the downtown area. And we've kind of gone to that the river is kind of this key piece that we want to illustrate. And we've kind of come to a statement that that the theme of the river is kind of building this branding framework for representing these diverse and exciting experiences in the downtown. So the river can carry this origin story and this reflection of heritage through the river and its presence in the downtown. It's kind of that prominent piece that you have in the area. It's creating that longevity. It's a theme and a brand that will stay for the duration of the downtown, and is kind of this also carrying the future of the downtown, right? So improving the river and being so focused on the sustainability of the river, but then also being active on the river and finding new ways to engage. It's very forward thinking. It's experiencing the river in a new way. But there's also this embracing of art. So there's this opportunity that we have to also kind of mention and sort of feature this sculptural love in the downtown, that there's this art that's so present and is amazing to see when you're visiting the downtown, that we can still carry through with the sign devices, that these are sort of art pieces themselves, that there's something unique and engaging to look at with the system in that look and feel. But we're also wanting to be inclusive, right? So thinking of ways to represent these diverse groups that are within the downtown through the sign system. So there's a lot with the river that we sort of took on as a direction for the overall sign look and feel. So looking forward to showing that today. And then we can go to the next slide. So we are going to go through the selected sign family design and looking at that design through a few representative sign types. And the first sign type that we're looking at here today is a gateway. So we understand that through a gateway that there are key entry points along the interstate that we want to capture audiences that are coming from out of state, or they're coming from our regional areas here in the state. We want to be able to design a gateway for that specific condition. And we kind of have these, just from our study, these various opportunities that we could have our sign be designed specifically for that area, but then still be very cohesive with the overall sign system look and feel. So this is a representative rendering of what a gateway could look like in this particular location, but also being mindful that there's still this rhythm of cascading rapids that we're starting to use here as that iconic feature for the design. So you can kind of see with these different light metal panels, being able to have color here as an opportunity, lighting as an opportunity, but then also impacting the landscape so that you have a greater presence with that sign. So with gateways, you have all of these considerations that you can play with to impact the environment in which we're designing for, but then having that identity as the key message here at these arrival points, that I have arrived to downtown Grand Rapids. So that's something that we want to make sure that we have as a prominent piece with these gateways is, again, as we said before, kind of creating that excitement that I have arrived at downtown. So here's the gateway conceptual design, and again, that would change depending on the site for each of our gateways. Here we have our welcome sign design, and again, playing off of this cascading rapids idea where you're having these layered panels in this kind of river wave shape, playing off of different tones for representing river. But again, the color could also be another opportunity for us to represent different districts of downtown or represent different groups. It could expand beyond the blue. I think this would definitely work and be flexible for how we want to have this kind of presence in diversity. So for our welcome sign, We see the locations here being for our major roadways, so not necessarily our interstate entry points, but could be other roadways that are starting to define our DDA boundary. So you would see most of these kind of post panel signs for helping to define that boundary. And for our directional, large vehicular directionals, these will be our sign devices that will deliver destination messaging to our motorists. So this is, again, our key place for directing to parking, but then also from a motorist standpoint, I have to understand where my destination is and get me to that general area. So then I can, either find parking either close to or kind of proximate to my destination. But it is also carrying that sense of identity as well. You can see here that we're also carrying the city brand as well for each of our sign devices, and kind of being flexible and sensitive to, let's find ways to integrate that city brand on this sign system. But also being able to deliver these prioritized destinations. We've worked with the steering committee to really narrow in on where we would like our visitors to go. So we have our prioritized list, and what you're seeing here today is kind of a representation of what that messaging would look like. But also with these, this design of the sign would meet our Department of Transportation criteria for number of messages per panel, and for character height and contrast. So we're kind of meeting those key points there, understanding that this could be a double-sided sign, and again, kind of creating that sense of layering and cascading rapids with these panels that are pin mounted together to sort of create that dimensional effect and sense of rhythm and flow. And we also have a pedestrian kiosk as well. And this is kind of a representation of that vehicular directional in the environment. The only representational, I would just kind of take this as a way to see this in environment. It's not the actual placement. And here we have our pedestrian kiosk. And here we would see the different ways that we could deliver our information for pedestrians. As I'm walking through the downtown, what information do I need to get myself to the right area, get myself back to parking, find the nearest transit stop, then also like what is the way to Grand River Corridor or to Hardside. This is a very multi-layered sign device that we're showing as static here, but could also be interactive. We would design this for opportunities for both, whether that is a digital vinyl print that you're able to put in as a static element, or being able to work with some third-party software that could help us with creating that interactive wayfinding experience. But here you can see that we're identifying the street. We're finding ways to help you orient yourself with where you are, providing directional information to destinations, and then using map graphics to again help users orient themselves to where they are, and listing those key restaurants and businesses and attractions within the downtown that I am also close to. It is within a 5 to 7 minute walk. We're carrying the brand for the city as well, but then you can also see with how we have some playful opportunities for showing the cascading rapids here, and with this kind of ground mounted sign, being able to have the layered panels to achieve that idea of cascading rapids and creating some really cool movement here with the different colored blue panels here. And some of the graphics are not showing up completely. There's some missing fonts and colors, but the overall idea here is kind of, you can kind of see here, you would actually have a metal base there at the bottom, so being sensitive to snow, so not having any important information, within that kind of 3 foot or kind of 2 foot range from the ground, that all the important information is going to be above that level. Just being mindful of snow and things that mowers or and so forth that could hit the sign, but we want to be able to be sensitive to clearing that kind of 2 foot zone there at the ground. And you can see the sign here in the environment. And this is a representation of the 3 sign types that we have here today that are reflecting that look and feel of the sign system. And I think we also the listing for the full sign family and what sign devices will we develop to address these visitor touch points. So again, we have arrival, a series of gateways, looking to develop a neighborhood district ID, either a post panel sign or through street banners, creating a system that would help our neighborhoods have that cohesive delivery of application. Then also including street name signs and what that street name sign will look like with this new system. We have our directionals, whether 4-line or 3-line, could include pedestrian directionals, and our kiosks, series of identity signs for parking, whether that be flag mounted or ground mounted, at our lots, in our garages, but also for our parking, bicycle parking ID or our electric vehicle parking IDs. We're designing for transit, so at our stops, at our stations, we would develop a destination map that can help visitors, get to their destination from that stop. Looking at skywalk as well, so some interior signage, directionals, overhead directionals, or wall-mounted, flag-mounted directionals throughout the skywalk system that you would see, and then also an informational kiosk as well. And trails, so looking at the River Edges Trail and the Grand River Corridor, how do we get visitors to destinations from that corridor and kind of use that as a way to be a new transportation option and system as well. So taking this system and expanding it to the trails is something that we're looking at, providing that regulatory signs for safety and crossing our key vehicular intersections, but then also interpretive signage. This is kind of where we see the home for telling that Grand Rapids history. But then again, providing that trail directional etiquette signage as well, mile markers. These are some of the sign types that we would typically see for trails, and something that we would integrate within our system. And I believe that's all we have for today. Next steps would be for us to further the sign design that you've seen here into our 50% design development set, and have a few checkpoints with our steering committee for the refinement of this design and kind of the further development of this design, and starting to look at our messaging and location plans for these sign types, and start our construction documents for the system. So that's kind of what we see as our next steps.
One of the things I'll just quickly mention here is as we move through this process, to one of the elements that we are looking at incorporating beyond the static signs that you saw here are looking for like kind of prime areas to put more advanced or 21st century wayfinding as well. So things like interactive and electronic kiosks that can either interact with people's phones or provide just a different type of experience versus a more static wayfinding sign.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment, I love the gateway signs, the option, I could see those being at several locations. That could really be dynamic, I think. Member Eddie, do you have your hand up? Do you have a question or comment?
Yes. First off, I want to say, yeah, that was a great presentation, Brianna. Thank you for that. Very informative, and I liked all the pops of color. But I had a few different thoughts, and Melvin just answered a couple of them when I was just thinking about any digital pieces to this. But therefore, it draws me to say, would disability advocates be a part of the conversation? I'm just thinking of, all the different types of learners and abilities out there. Then the other pieces that I was thinking about was, a QR code, and that was mentioned. And then thinking of, is there a way, though this is a different body, to somehow tie these signs in with airport things that are going on at the airport, so that it's a seamless transition from, hey, we just arrived in Grand Rapids, we're heading downtown, and there's some connection there with, how one gets to the city, and then what happens when you are in the downtown area, just so that maybe things look similar. Maybe there's one key element, maybe it's that river piece that kind of carries through. And then I had a thought process about lighting, perhaps solar lights over some of the signs that aren't digital, so that, during the winter when it gets dark a little earlier, the signs are still lit. You can still see the sign. And then my last piece is more of a soapbox advocacy for internet downtown, free internet downtown.
That would be awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And just a comment really quick. Yep. And I love everything that you mentioned, and we're kind of in that same line of thought of integrating for interactive kiosks where we kind of have these high active pedestrian traffic areas, and kind of getting that exposure and that kind of benefit from having a digital sign out there. We definitely want to be mindful of where we have power and so forth. But yes, we want to integrate QR codes that are using technology that can sort of read audibly the information that you're seeing on the sign for our visually impaired users. And we've kind of recommended that for our kiosks and for Skywalk, having a QR code that leads to an app that can read that information and kind of read the maps that you're seeing. To kind of help those users, and for our multilingual audiences as well. But too, I think that it's great to have that either it's a touchscreen kiosk or something that at least has that QR code that gets us to that 21st century wayfinding in the areas that we need it most. So yeah, totally agree with everything that you've mentioned.
Jermail, I just wanted to mention too that Disability Advocates of Kent County is also a listed consultant on the project. So if you look at the cover of the presentation, they're listed too with RLR and Progressive AE as a consultant.
So Melvin, who else is on the design team? Is someone from Experience Grand Rapids on the team?
Yeah, so our steering committee is pretty robust. We have representation from Experience GR. We have several business owners. We have I'm going to butcher it, Rick. I think it's AHC Hospitality has representation as well.
That's not that hard to say, Melvin.
I was just trouble remembering if it was correct. Yeah, so we have a pretty robust team. We have some residents from downtown.
Someone from the Boss Place, I assume?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we have a pretty good list. I think there's 15, 16 members on the committee as a whole right now.
Okay, good. Member McNeely, do you have a question or comment?
Real quick, just some comments. I think it's great work, and a lot of the feedback that Jamal had, I thought was awesome and on point. If memory serves correct regarding the airport, I believe parts of the property out at the airport are actually the city's. And so that would be a really interesting tie-in if that gateway sign could be brought out there. On the gateway sign, I noticed in the current rendering that it didn't have that Calder tie that was connected throughout the rest of the signage. So just calling that out, that if you, for consistency's sake, you might want to consider adding the Calder to the gateway. And then with the idea of making them interactive, it might be interesting to look at technologies that allow for a cell-based call button that went to the city's 311 desk. So if somebody had a hard time reading or understanding where they're at or needed multilingual access, somebody, a live operator could help them. Those are my comments.
Thank you. That's great for us to know. Yep.
That's great. Thanks, Greg.
Any other comments or questions? Great report. Great start, Brianna.
I had one other thing, if I may.
Sure.
Along the lines of those who are serving on the committee, I'm not sure if this would be, I feel like this might be a good place to say, you know, is there anyone, and maybe they're already represented there, but anyone that's outside of the downtown area to serve as well. I'm thinking of those groups that we say we want to attract downtown that may live in the outskirts, that may live in 49507 or what have you. But maybe within the groups that you, Melvin, mentioned, maybe there's already representatives from other communities there. So I just wanted to put that out there so that folk can say, you know, that they too had a say in what the downtown wayfinding might look like.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Melvin and Brianna. Nice report, and we look forward to the 50% DD, the 100% DD, and the CD, and the implementation of signage. So,
thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. And just to remember Eddie's question, we'll share the steering committee as well as everyone that's been involved. There's been, beyond the steering committee, there's been a lot of engagement. So we'll get that out so that we can make sure that everyone we feel like needs to be involved has been involved.
Yeah, I'm happy to see the Skywalk signage on the list. It's been years and years of wanting to update, you know, the Skywalk signage. So that'll be nice to finally accomplish, I think.
That, yeah, and the green signs that are out there currently, I think, are going on a couple decades old. So there's a need for an update.
Exactly. All right. We're now to the executive director report. Mr. Kelly, you're up front and center.
Yeah, I will make this brief, as I know we're already over our time, and I believe we have at least one public comment teed up. Wanted to point out, kind of carrying forward the conversations around the importance of the river. A couple of important actions have happened recently. One at City Commission yesterday, where they approved an option agreement with the CAA for consideration and potentially moving forward with the amphitheater at the 201 Market site. So certainly an initial step, more work to be done, but just want to make sure everyone was aware of that process and that is moving forward. As a component of that, the city is continuing to look at the Kent County Road Commission site as a possible relocation area for their operations at 201. So some important steps have been happening on that site and that key opportunity site in downtown. I just want to make sure our board is tracking that as it moves forward. Also wanted to highlight the Lion Square project. So a few of us have been involved in those discussions over the past few months since the board approved continued redesign of that important space. We are expecting to have an update for you all at our next month's meeting in March. So you can see where that progress has been going, but a lot of work going on river-related sites. In addition, just wanted to underline that I was able to participate in the GR Noir ribbon cutting ceremony that happened last Monday. So that's at the Division Weston site, and that, as you might recall, was a project that received a retail innovation grant from the DDA, and so we are excited and thrilled to have GR Noir open in downtown, up and running. If you haven't been in, the space looks amazing, so please do go check that out. And then the last thing to highlight, because it is a huge focus of our work at the moment, is the World of Winter. So hopefully you've all had a chance to come down and check out the art installations and some of the activities that have been going on. There are still new art elements getting added even as we speak. So today and tomorrow, a new installation is going in at the 555 site. And then there's also going to be a number of sculptures going in for Valentine's, not least of which will be the 5,000-pound block of ice that's getting carved down at Rosa Parks Circle on Saturday. So all that information, as a reminder, is on the website, the World of Winter GR. Please do check that out, and there's an interactive map component on there if you kind of want to spatially and geographically organize in your head all the things that are going on. So we hope to see you there. And then lastly, as a component of that, given we are in February, there are a number of Black History Month activities going on. So the walking tours that we help organize continue to happen and happen throughout the month. There are a few events happening at the public library coming up, Black History Month story times, as well as a community spotlight on the book City Within a City. And then there's also exhibits over at the African American Museum and Archive. So a lot happening downtown, despite some of the COVID restrictions. But as we touched on earlier, restaurants are able to accommodate 25% capacity. So we hope people will come down, spend money, of course, be safe, but enjoy some of the winter festival atmosphere that's going on down here. I think with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Sounds good. All right. Next is public comment. If there's anyone in the public on this call that would like to speak, just a reminder that you have 3 minutes. I see Mr. Atchison. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Amanda, could you bring up my first page? It should, yeah. Yes, okay, on the left there, but basically I'm here to, add to the wayfinding signs for downtown Grand Rapids. My goals are to make downtown Grand Rapids more user-friendly through signs, and I still think a year-round information center at Pearl and Monroe, a central information center, would be great. But I think everyone can agree that the main intersection downtown is Pearl and Monroe, right at Rosa Parks Circle by design. By design, Pearl and Monroe is the main intersection, and I think we should let everyone know that Pearl and Monroe is the main downtown intersection with the 5 points there, north, south, east, west, and southeast. Will be great to let everybody know. If you want to go to North Monroe, you head north. You want to go to Bridge Street, you can either head west or north, but these signs will help other people give other people directions. And I still think big banner signs for the Arena District, Bridge Street, and also like South Granville Avenue to let everybody know like where Founders is. But if you could go to the next page, page 3 and 4, like if you look at the page 4, that view heading south, that never existed until 1979 when the city made a very wise decision to tear down the old, Dime Street Alley, Woolworths, W.T. Grants, and others, and make that great open space we have now that we call Rosa Parks Circle. And right there is where you should put the information center. And earlier I did hear, how could you attract more Latinx people to downtown? I think in the information center, everybody who works in there should be bilingual with English and Spanish. I hope Brianna Metzger is still on the, hasn't left the meeting yet, because I'm going to mail her some documents to add to the wayfinding systems you guys are doing. And I do agree that them old green signs you have are kind of old and outdated, and none of them have restaurant and bar information. But that's what the information center would do, would let everyone know what's open that day, and every day things would change. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment? All right, hearing none. Next is board member discussion. Is there anyone on the board that would like to offer up a comment or suggestion, speak now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a comment, and it's just in regards to the ambassadors, to the ambassador program. And as a business owner and as folk are out and about more, I would love to see maybe a reintroduction of the ambassadors to business owners and organizations downtown, whether that's, you know, an ambassador popping in saying hey or introducing themselves, or maybe just creating a Zoom meeting or something like that where the ambassador program is again reintroduced in terms of sharing what they provide for the downtown. I think they're doing a great job. I've seen them out shoveling snow at the intersections and wiping down things. And so I would just really appreciate them. And I want to make sure that everyone knows about them, as well as what their parameters of work is.
Agreed. Any other comments? Appreciate everybody's time. It's great to see everybody, even if it's just Zoom. Hopefully everybody can support our local restaurants. Hope to see you downtown. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you March 10th, if not sooner.